bitch!
What's blood for, if not for shedding?
Hang up the phone!
Who is this?
Who is that?
Dude Horrifying, the podcast to fill your horror needs.
Hello, I'm Jake Horrifying, and this is Dude Horrifying. Today is episode 3. We're going to be comparing Psycho, Robert Bloch's 1959 Psycho, versus Alfred Hitchcock's film, the 1960 Psycho. Stay tuned and enjoy. So to start off this podcast, I want to talk about the inspiration behind Psycho. Kind of. Robert Bloch had a small amount of inspiration from the heinous acts of Ed Gein. If you don't know Ed Gein, he's known as the Butcher of Plainfield. You probably do know of Ed Gein, you just don't know it. Ed Gein's the inspiration for Psycho, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Silence of the Lambs, House of a Thousand Corpses, Devil's Rejects, and quite a few other projects. He's a legendary killer. And I hate to use the word legendary because he shouldn't be celebrated. He shouldn't be put on a pedestal. He's a disgusting human being that committed one of the most macabre and horrendous crimes in the history of the United States. But there's a fascination behind him, and that's something you can't deny as a human being, is because you wonder what made him do that. And the reason why I say it's got a loose connection with Psycho is because whenever the heinous crimes of Ed Gein had happened, they happened in 1957. Psycho came out, it was published and on bookshelves in 1959. So when 1957 comes around, Robert Bloch was well into the writing process of Psycho. He had heard stories about what had happened because he lived 35 miles from Plainfield, but he didn't really know what happened. I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but I'm going to say this. There was an internet. I know a lot of people, a lot of younger people, they can't conceive a world without internet. There's not internet. This news isn't getting out as widespreadly as news does this day. Now, it comes on the national television, on the main channels that you would get, but not everybody had a television. Oftentimes you get news from the radio, but a lot of the details had not come out. A lot of the details wouldn't come out until after Psycho had come out, been published, after the movie had been done by Alfred Hitchcock. For the news that did come out, Robert incorporated it into the end of the book. And whenever I start discussing Ed Gein's story, I'm going to talk about what happened with Ed Gein, and then I want you to sit on that. I'm going to sit on it. We're going to start discussing Psycho, and I'll talk about that ending of Psycho and how it ties in with who Ed Gein is. This isn't an episode about Ed Gein, but there are so many similarities between the character of Norman Bates and Ed Gein that it can't go untalked about. So, though this is going to be described as a comparison between the Psycho book and Psycho movie, this will also be a comparison between Psycho, the franchise, versus the horrendous, heinous acts of Ed Gein. So to start off with Ed Gein, I want to talk about him. Let's talk about Ed. Ed is born on August 27th, 1906. He would end up dying in July of 1984, July 26th, which is funny because that's the day that I'm filming this podcast. Wanted to get a head start. You won't see it for a couple weeks. Actually, you'll be hearing it now, but I filmed this a couple weeks ago whenever you're hearing this. He died July 26th at Mendota Mental Health Institute in Madison, Wisconsin. I don't think it was that far from Plainfield. I'm not entirely sure. I didn't do research on that. So he grows up. He has a brother named Henry. His mother's name is Augusta. His father's name is George. From what I understand, nobody liked George. George was an alcoholic. He owned some sort of business, ended up selling it and going and working on the farm. And this farm that they are working on is an important part of Ed Gein's story because Ed Gein was, how do I say this? The farm was Ed Gein's prison. Augusta was an extremely controlling mother. She was religious. She was controlling. She hated people that drank alcohol. She hated when George would drink. She wouldn't let she wouldn't let Ed drink. So Ed, whenever he was young, would only go to school and come home. He was only allowed to leave the farm to go to school. He's very social. What's the word? He wasn't very social. He didn't get the opportunity to be social. His mother would not let him make friends. His mother was very, very controlling, and the way she treated Ed was rather disgusting. And this isn't to make excuses for what he did. This is just psychology. What she had done to Ed had started to mess with him. 1940 rolls around. Ed's about 34 years old. His father, George, dies. All that's left now is Ed, Henry, and Augusta. Henry gets married, starts a family, and moves off. So it's just Ed and his mother, Augusta, all by themselves. Ed has no one but his mother, so his mother becomes the most important thing in his life. This becomes an issue to Henry, his brother. Henry one day comes up to Ed and he says, Ed, I noticed that you're getting really close with Mom, and it's a little bit concerning. You shouldn't be this close with her. And Ed maybe killed him. I'm not going to get into it. I'll talk about it very briefly. If you want to find out if he did, or you want to hear theories, I'm sure there are tons of other podcasts. But there is a potential that Ed Gein killed Henry. Because on May 16th, 1944, Ed and Henry, they're out at the farm burning brush. They're burning trees, limbs, stuff like that out near the marsh on the back end of the farm. And the fire gets out of hand. So they have to call the fire department. The fire department shows up. They help put out the fire. But Henry's missing. Nobody knows where Henry is. So Ed and a team of people go out searching for Henry. They find his body dead, face down in the dirt, and it's a tragedy. So at this point, Ed has lost his father and his brother. And the reason why people think, and myself included, that he murdered his brother is when they had done the autopsy, they had found bruises on his brother's head. Now, that could have been from his brother falling. There could have been a lot of things that takes place here. But it just doesn't seem right. At first, whenever they take his body, they think that it's from heart failure. Then, after doing the autopsy and stuff like that, the police rule out foul play. They say foul play is not here. And then they claim asphyxiation. So Ed has to bury his brother. His mother, at some point, has a stroke. I don't know when. Ed has to take care of his mother. So Ed is at this barn pretty much by himself at this point, with his mother being as sick as she is, which plays into Psycho, and we'll get into that. And at this point, he's pretty much by himself. But he doesn't feel that way because Mother is still there. It's not until 1945 that Augusta dies at the age of 67. 67 is when she dies. Ed is, well, I'm not going to speak for the man, but I'd assume he was devastated. He just lost everything, you know? That was his main focus of life for, at that point, he would have been about 41. For 41 years, that was the main focus of his life, was his mother, and for the past couple years, taking care of her. So, there's a really cool quote. Whenever I was doing my research, I found this quote. It's from author Harold Schechter. He goes on to say that he lost his only friend and one true love. And he was absolutely alone in the world. And that, I think that hammers home on how he probably felt. Is I think Ed felt by himself. He felt like he was in this world now, and there was this emptiness that he had to fill. So what does Ed do? Ed does the most disgusting thing in the history of mankind. In 1954, Ed is believed to have killed tavern owner, I got her name right here, Mary Hogan. Don't know why, but he confessed to killing her and was convicted of killing her. 3 years later, he kills one of the hardware store owners in the town of Plainfield by the name of Bernice Worden. This is when Ed Gein gets discovered. It's here in 1957, the murder of Bernice Worden. So subsequently, her son, Frank, comes to the hardware store, look in search for his mother. She's not there. Something's wrong, though. He knows that something's wrong. And he recalls that Ed Gein was there the night before. Ed went to go buy something. He goes to the police, tells the police about Ed. Police roll up to Ed's farm, and what they find is one of the most disgusting discoveries in the history of the United States. And this is the intro for, like, Texas Chainsaw. Whenever you hear the voiceover and it's like, and this is the most macabre, disgusting thing that happened in the annals of American history.
That day were to lead to the discovery of one of the most bizarre crimes in the annals of American history.
This is exactly what it's referencing. Is this in Ed Gein? Is they find lampshades made of human faces. They find Mary Hogan, the tavern owner's skull. They find belts made of female nipples. Leggings made from skin. Bowls made from skulls. What they find in there, there's a lot more. I didn't go into detail. It's gross. Mostly, I think, most of, if not all of the people that he dug up, because he dug up 9 corpses, were female. He also, by the way, admitted to killing 7 other people, but there's no convictions of that. He's only convicted of the 2, potentially has 9 victims, definitely mutilated 9 corpses. And it's disgusting. So how he would mutilate these corpses, how he'd go and get these corpses, is whenever someone would die in the town, the fresh grave, he'd go and dig it up. Because no one would suspect it, because it was soil. There was no grass or anything like that. So he'd dig up these graves, take the bodies, fill in the holes. No one would ever suspect anything. Because he wasn't really there to grave rob. He was there to... I mean, he was grave robbing, but he wasn't there for the valuables. He was there for the bodies, which... it's extremely creepy. So he'd take these bodies back home and in his free time make stuff with them. He had this odd fascination with making stuff, kind of like going back to Psycho, how Norman Bates has this obsession with taxidermy, which I think that's a connection there. I don't think Robert Bloch intended that when he wrote Psycho, but it's eerily similar. So Ed Gein, he gets arrested. They find him insane, which makes sense. He was very much legally insane. He gets sentenced to the psychiatric hospital till his death. After his death, they bury him with his family. And the crazy thing about this is he's buried in the same cemetery as, I think it's Bernice Holden. He's buried in the same place as the victim that he murdered. And another disgusting thing is whenever they found Bernice's body, her head had been decapitated. Her body was found dressed like a deer. If you don't know what that means, you ever seen a butcher shop, and whenever you kill an animal, you hang it up and you slice it down the middle of the torso and you flail it out so that way all the blood drains from it? That's how they found her body. And it was just the next day. It's absolutely disgusting. And that is what made Ed Gein's story so compelling, is people were so enthralled by it. They couldn't believe it. It was absolutely disgusting. No one could understand why someone would do that. And as they did psychiatric evaluations, you realized Ed Gein's life had really fallen apart because his mother had been so controlling. He never developed socially. He was so centered around his mother that when he lost her and he was alone in the world, he went and did these horrible, heinous things. Oh, it's so gross. It is so gross what he did. Doing the research, I looked at the photos, and it is disturbing. It is something that I'm a huge horror fan. Gore doesn't really gross me out, but the idea of it actually being living beings is just beyond me. And anyways, moving on from that, Ed Gein lives on in the dark side of American history. 2 years later, Robert Bloch drops in Psycho, a novel. One of my favorite novels I've ever read. Psycho is, let me find out for you right now, 175 pages. It was a quick read. I read it in 2 days. 2 days, and I probably spent 2 hours the first day. So really, I spent the majority of it on the second day. It is a great read. Burns through real quick. There's a lot of suspense in this novel. I think that it feeds so well into what Alfred Hitchcock wanted to do with the movie, which is why that movie ended up being such a success. There are many differences between the book and the movie. However, I do want to go on record of saying that Psycho, the movie, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, is a very faithful adaptation of Robert Bloch's Psycho. It is, the changes are so minute and there's not much missing from it that it holds its integrity. It pays honor to the book, but it is its own thing. There are some glaring differences, which I will definitely get into. And there's also some very small differences. And we'll talk about it all. I want to talk about Psycho being the first time I interacted with Psycho was the novel. I had never seen the movie until about 3 days ago. It's not that I didn't want to. It's just that it was one that I hadn't quite gotten around to. There's a lot of movies out, and there's a lot to catch up on. So this whole thing started whenever I went to the theaters in June to go see The Black Phone. Black Phone was fantastic. I'm not going to let anyone say otherwise. I'm not going to let y'all slander The Black Phone. It was based off a short story by Joe Hill, but Joe Hill also went and wrote a novelization of the movie, which is a little bit different than the movie. So I go to the local bookstore to go get Black Phone. It's not there. What I do see is Psycho by Robert Bloch. And I go, I didn't know that Psycho was originally a novel. So I pick it up, and I'm reading the back of it. It's got this really cool quote on it that says, Psycho all came from Robert Bloch's book, quote Alfred Hitchcock. And I'm like, that is really cool. So I pick it up. I'm like, I came for a book. I'm getting a book, damn it. I take this book home, and it was, like I said earlier, it was a lot of fun. I couldn't put this book down. I was sad I had to put it down the first day. I started reading it, and it was like 1 a.m., and I was like, damn, I gotta go to bed. Next day, I pick it up, finish it by nighttime. It's a quick book, and I was just infatuated with it. I was infatuated with the story. It's so well written. It's so well crafted. But the way the book is crafted is different than the way that the movie is crafted. You see, one thing that starts off is Psycho the book and Psycho the movie start off from different point of views. Whenever you're introduced to the character of Norman Bates in Psycho the novel by Robert Bloch, Norman is the first thing you read about. Norman is inside of his den, at his house, reading a book about Native Americans cutting people's bodies open and making human skin drums. And he's reading this, and there's an interaction with Mother. And then you're introduced to the Mother character. And this, coming into this without any knowledge, I only knew the shower scene, and I knew that Norman Bates was played by Anthony Perkins in the movie. I knew nothing else. I mean, I know the house and the motel and the back lot of Universal Studios, but that's it. There was twists in this I did not expect, and Mother was one of them. Because whenever I was introduced, another thing I knew before going into this is that I knew that Norman loved Mother. I thought I should have said that. But anyways, yeah, that was insane. Because so Norman has a straight up conversation with Norma, his mother, at the beginning of the book, where she talks about how she doesn't like him reading the book and how he needs to go down and go turn the light on for the motel because he had forgotten to turn it on. And he banters with her back and forth saying, nobody comes through here anyways, Mom. Ever since the highway was built, this motel has been a failure. And surely enough, someone pulls up and he's got to go down and get everything ready. And it's pouring down rain, which is also another reason why he didn't want to get up and go do all this. And that's how the beginning of Psycho is this introduction of Norman Bates and his relationship with his mother. And that makes the novel different from the movie, because the movie focuses on his victim. It opens up with Marion Crane, which is funny that she's called Marion Crane because she's Mary Crane in the book. I know why they call her Marion Crane, and I'll get into it later. But Marion Crane is the introduction. She's with Sam Loomis. They're in a hotel in Phoenix, Arizona, and doing things that, adults do. They're in this hotel hooking up, and she's got to go back to work. And Sam's got to catch his flight to get back to Fayetteville. And the whole intro is about Marion. It's about who she is, how she wants to get married, how she doesn't necessarily have the money, and how Sam is in debt. She goes to work, and this opportunity comes where she can get a lot of money if she steals it, and she takes it. And this whole intro is about the character Marion. And that's the first character you get to really focus on. And the reason why that's important is because the novel is more of, even though it's got different point of views from Mary, Lila, and Sam Loomis, it's more like a character study in who Norman Bates is. That's how I perceived it. So the movie, because it's a horror film, it's supposed to shock you. So it gives you this protagonist. It gives you who you think is going to be the final girl, even though I don't think that really became a coined phrase until the 70s, with Marion Crane. And so whenever you see her in the shower scene get murdered, it's kind of a shock. It's a lot of disbelief. Now, I expected it because I know of the scene. So it was like that moment where I go, oh, that's that scene. I know that scene. I was like that in the book too. So that doesn't happen until chapter 3. Because chapter 1 sets up Norman. Chapter 2 sets up Mary. There are quite a few differences. Some things I want to point out. First off, in the book, she lives in Texas. In the movie, she lives in Arizona. I don't know why the change of scenery. Also, because of that change of scenery, whenever they were doing filming for Phoenix, Arizona, there was a woman named Mary Crane in Phoenix, so they had to change her name to Marion so people wouldn't get confused with Mary Crane in Phoenix, which is why her name in the movie is Marion. Had they just said it was Texas and did it there, you don't run into that issue. But anyways, similarly to the movie, Mary, because I'm talking about the novel primarily, steals $40,000 from
to the
her
movie.
Marion steals, or the company she works for, which is Lottery Agency. I'm talking about the novel primarily. They're making a sale, steals $40,000 from her Tommy Cassidy. Company. Who's buying a house for $40,000, which is Lottery Agency. Daughters. They're making a sale, which is to from a client, Tommy Cassidy. Who's buying a house for $40,000 for his daughters' money and run. That's what all of chapter 2 was about. Mary much spot on the run. In the movie, Lila's gone for the weekend, making a deal with the records because she works for a record store. That's what all of chapter 2 was about. Mary on the run. All right. Lila's gone for the weekend, making a deal with the records because she works for a record store. Go meet up with Sam. She's going to hit the jackpot and go on. So she's like, all right, this is my chance. Lila has my pack up all belongings. Exactly. Leave. Mary, stop. Go meet up with Sam. Tell him I hit the jackpot. Hits the road. buys a car,
and get married,
or trades in
Lilo
her
has my
car.
back.
That's
Gets another
exactly
car, but it's like a horrible
Mary's
deal.
thought
And they go
process.
into that in the movie.
She goes, hits the
movie does
road,
this weird part, and
buys
I
a
had
car.
to go back and look because I was like, I don't remember.
Trades
this
in her car.
In the movie,
gets
there's
another
this
car,
scene
but it's like a horrible
with a cop.
where she falls asleep on the road. This cop pulls up behind her, and he's all like, "What are you doing, miss?" She's like, "I'm just traveling. I got tired, so I had to take a break." The whole cop, it was kind of unnecessary. I guess it was just there to build suspense. It was really to get her on the edge of the seat, because in the novel, she is just stressed out. And I think they do a good job of explaining how she feels in the movie, because it does these voiceovers, which is her thought process of how things are going to go. And you can tell the anxiety that she has with what she's thinking. So she's on her way. She misses the wrong exit and ends up on a country road off the highway, which used to be the only way. And she's real tired. It's starting to rain. It's downpouring. She sees a hotel. The lights aren't on. So she pulls up to this hotel and starts, I think she honks. I can't remember that part, but I'm pretty sure she honks. And Norman comes down. And then we get the story of Psycho. We get to see it unravel at this point. So another difference is she says that she has to sign into this registry under a different name and different information. So she signs into this registry, and in the book she says she's from San Antonio because she's got Texas plates. In the movie she says she's from Los Angeles because she's got a Los Angeles newspaper. Another difference is whenever she's hiding this money in the book, she hides it in the glove box. In the movie, she hides it in a newspaper. So she gets settled in. She's putting all her belongings down inside of her room. And she asks Norman if there's any restaurants around. And Norman's like, the nearest diner is like 15 miles away. It's the same exact setup in the book and the movie. And she goes, okay, all right. And he's like, I have dinner cooking. I'm gonna have sandwiches. You're more than welcome to join. She goes, okay. And now the setting of the dinner is in different locations for the book and the movie. In the movie, it takes place in the office. In the book, it takes place in the house. And I think that the dinner, this is the only scene that I think should have happened inside of the house, is I think that they should have had dinner in the house in the movie, because it would have convinced audiences even more that Mother had killed her, and we'll get to that part. So, in the book, he's up at the house, and she comes up to the house, up the stairs and to the front door, and she hears an argument going on between Norma and Norman. And she hears that argument going on in the hotel, too, in the movie, but in the book, she's right at the front door. She can hear them bickering back and forth. Norman's like, you're not bringing a woman up here. And Norman's like, Mother, I'm going to do it anyways. Gosh. Anyways, he goes and brings her inside. They sit down. And this is when she learns about his love for taxidermy. He's got a stuffed squirrel that he talks about. In the movie, they're in his office. They don't even make it to the house. Still, you can see the taxidermy all around him. He's got stuffed birds and stuff all over the place. But in the book, she starts going off about how he needs to stand up to his mom, how he needs to free himself from her. And this is why, whenever I first read this book, I actually thought that the mother was the killer, because it was so well written. It was written to a point where I thought her talking, Mother heard it. Mother's upstairs. Mother heard her talking bad about Mother, you know? And, Norman gets defensive. Norman says that if he does anything with Mother, they're going to put her in a home. He doesn't want that to happen. He loves Mother. And then he goes on to say this line. And this line, well, it changes the course of Mary's life. And he goes, perhaps all of us go a little bit crazy. And that's when Mary decides that she's not going to follow through. This happens both in the book and the movie. She goes, all right, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to give the money, steal this money. I'm going to drive back to Texas, return the money. And she's like, this pathetic little man, Norman Bates, is the reason why I'm doing this. So she goes down. She's all happy. She's like thinking about now how she's going to recover the money that she lost in the car deal. And she's like, I'll get some rest, take a shower, go to sleep, and in the morning I'll drive back. So she gets in the shower. And surely enough, the curtain is thrown open and a woman is standing there with a knife and she starts stabbing. And we get the death of Mary and Marion Crane in both the book and movie. This is a game changer now. This is where the book starts to roll. Now, the movie has differences in these scenes. First off, the setting of the dinner. Norman Bates. This is the introduction of Norman Bates. Norman Bates in the movie is played by Anthony Perkins. Everyone who's listening, I'm assuming, has seen Anthony Perkins. If you haven't, look up a photo of him. I think you'll recognize him. Anthony Perkins was 28 when he made this movie. He was a sharp-looking man. He was tall, skinny, very handsome. He had a charmness to him. It's actually quite the opposite of how Norman Bates is in the book. Norman Bates is described as short, chubby, rosy cheeks, wears glasses. He's very socially awkward. He, quite literally, the physical description of him is the chicken guy from Toy Story. Straight up, he's the chicken guy. You could have had Wayne Knight play him in the 1998 remake instead of Vince Vaughn. Anyways, Anthony Perkins does not fit the description of Norman Bates, but Anthony Perkins does a fantastic job at acting out Norman's scenes, of acting out how Norman, handles things. And it is worthy to note that Norman does handle things a little bit differently in the book than the movie, just because you get more of his thought process in the book. You get to see what he's thinking. So, in the movie, there's brief scenes where Norman's mopping up the tub. He's taking the car out to the swamp. Well, the book explains exactly what he's thinking. The book talks about his paranoia, his anxiousness, how he's handling it. He's thinking about how he needs to turn in Mother. Another point that you don't get to see in the movie is he's like, oh my god, my mother's fucking crazy. She just slaughtered this woman. And he's like, oh my god. And also, after her death is when you find out. So, in the movie, you get to see Marion being spied on through the peephole. In the book, Chapter 4 talks about Norman's point of view of the murder. And that's when you see him using this peephole that he can spy on people through room number 1 from the bathroom. It's really fucking creepy. He'll give attractive women cabin number 1 so he can watch them undress and take showers. It's fucking creepy and it's disgusting. And in the book versus the movie, also, during the murder scene, he's drinking. He's taking a shot. So there's this quote in this book, which I'm not going to quote it spot on, but he's drinking it, and he's getting angrier and angrier about Mary and the shit she said at the house. He's like, that fucking bitch. And he uses the word bitch a lot. He's getting angrier and angrier, and he's like, Mother's going to protect me from these bitches, which is exactly what he's saying while he's drinking. And he takes another shot, and he takes another shot, because alcohol is a huge part in the book. It is such a big part. You see a lot of his changes whenever he switches to the Mother persona when he starts drinking. And so he blacks out, and that's when Mother kills her. He comes back, he comes to, he goes and finds her, and he's got to clean up the mess. And that's, so the movie gets into that, but the movie doesn't get into the drinking portion of it. So in the movie, he does come and find her. He comes down from the house and he goes, "Oh my God!" Well, he hears the shower going, and goes in there, and turns off the shower and just starts cleaning up. And yeah, it's a shame you don't get to see him contemplating in any sort of way about what Mother did. That's the only downside of the movie. Okay, I don't know if I've said that before. There might be a couple downsides to the movie. That's one of the downsides that I wish the movie got to cover, was him contemplating whether Mother did it or not, and seeing him say, well, I need to protect Mother at all costs, and that's why he has to handle it. Also, understand it's 1960 when Alfred Hitchcock made the movie. It would have been really cool, though, to see a lot more blood, because in the book it's described as him having to clean up a ton of blood, having to mop out the whole room. He's thorough. He's very smart in the book. He's thinking contingency plans. So after he goes and puts her body in the trunk, wraps her in the curtain, puts her body in the trunk, he goes and scours the room. He's looking, tearing the room apart, making sure that everything that belonged to her in that room is now in the car, ready to go into the swamp. So he finds an earring, and he can't find the other earring for the life of him. And he goes, God damn it, where is that other earring? That's a huge part in the book that's completely different from the movie. So in the movie, after, we're going to rewind just a tiny, tiny bit. After Marion, because movie, decides that she is going to go back and give the money back, she calculates how much money she's going to need to make up for, how much money she spent on the new car and whatnot, and then tears up this paper and throws it in the toilet. So that comes in play later in the movie, the torn up paper and the earring, because that's the discovery that Lila and Sam are going to make. But yeah, Norman's really smart. He's trying to find out, he's making sure that he has all his I's dotted and all his T's crossed. And he's going through thorough search, and he's like, okay, the room's clean. And he's like, and an easy thing I can do is not give anyone this room. He gets in the car, drives it down to the swamp, puts it in the swamp, and in the movie, that's it. You just see the swamp go down. And the swamp, I actually really like I think the swamp scene was done better in the movie than the book, because it's got the little bit of paranoia going on where it doesn't sink all the way, and Norman's kind of like, you can see he's on the edge. That's another part where Anthony Perkins absolutely kills it, is he's on the edge. He's like, oh shit, I need this thing to sink. And then you hear the glub, 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 and the car finally comes on down, and he has that relief. So yeah, in the movie, after he dumps the car, he goes in. Later on, he's going to use his own vehicle to cover up the tracks and claim that he's getting wood for the fireplace. But he goes back home that evening. He goes inside the kitchen, finds the bloody knife, finds some blood in the kitchen, cleans it up. He goes upstairs, finds his mother's bloodied dress, takes it. Or actually, this might have happened before, but he puts it all in the car. He gets rid of it. He might have burned it. I can't remember exactly. But he gets rid of the fucking clothes. He makes sure there's no stones left unturned. But there's one issue. Mother's missing. He has no idea where Mother went. So he's like, maybe she got caught, so on and so forth. And he's having this thing, and he's like, you know what? It's her fault. It's all her fault. And he goes on with life. And that's just, it's those little details you don't get to see in the movie that it makes it sad, because those are the little details that I loved. Because, like I said, Psycho by Robert Bloch is much more of a character study. So now we get to get into the part where Lila comes to Fairville. The part where Lila comes to Fairville to meet Sam Loomis to ask him about her missing sister. So in the movie and in the book, Lila shows up. She's like, hey, I need to talk with Sam. Sam's like, well, in the book, he confuses Lila. So the book, it talks about how Sam doesn't really know Mary at all. So he confuses Lila, thinks that it's Mary, and starts hugging her and kissing her because she looks just like her older sister, just a little bit younger. That's not the greeting she gets in the movie. She just shows up and he goes, "Who are you?" And she's like, "I'm Lila." And he goes, "Great to see you, but like, where's Mary? Or where's Marion?" And she's like, "Well, that's what I'm here for." And these scenes are pretty similar until Arbogast shows up. When Arbogast shows up, it's when it changes. First off, the book's version of Arbogast is awesome. He's like a cowboy with this gray Stetson, and they really focus on this gray Stetson. And I like the picture that I envisioned Arbogast in the book was Sam Elliott showing up. Sam Elliott with his deep voice. He's like, "I need to find Mary Crane. I need this $40,000. I need my goddamn money." But in the movie, he's kind of like a gangster. I don't know. I don't know. That's not exactly what he's like, but he's a little bit chubbier, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm looking for this $40,000." But he's working with Lila in the book, whereas in the movie he stalked her to Fairville. So in the book, he realizes that Sam has no idea where she is, and Arbogast starts working with Lila and Sam to find the whereabouts of Mary so he can recover the money for his client, Mr. Lowry. Whereas in the movie, he's like, "Well, I'm going to make sure that you didn't have anything to do with this." And he takes off and does his own thing. So in the book, there's a lot of discussion between Lila, Sam, and Arbogast. Going to hotels, eating dinner. They banter with him. "Hey, should we go and tell the police?" And he's like, "Just give me time. Or let me do a Sam Elliott voice. Hey, give me time. I will figure it out." Or I guess that's more Arthur Morgan. "Just give me some damn time, all right? I will help you." But in the movie, he's just doing his own thing. And then he does, in the movie, so they in both the book and movie, he goes to Norman Bates Hotel. However, it takes him a lot longer to figure out to go to Norman Bates Hotel motel. I gotta start saying motel. I think I said hotel like 3 fucking times. I'm sure people will be like, "It's not a fucking hotel, dude." My bad. You're 100% right. It's a motel. So he goes to Norman Bates Motel, and it takes him a lot longer. That's like the last place he decides to look in the book. Because he's like, it's off the fucking highway. He's like, "Well, I guess I'll go to this." The last stone unturned is this middle of nowhere motel, the Bates Motel. So he goes out there, and in the book, shout out to Anthony Perkins in this scene. The scene is fucking fantastic. When Anthony Perkins interacts with Arbogast in the movie, I thought Anthony Perkins showing how distraught he was pretty spot on to the book. And I thought he acted his ass off. But there's a little bit of a difference because in the book, Norman Bates kind of captures, like, he gets a hold of himself after the nervousness, and he goes, "Well, my plan," like, he's like, "I've thought this through." Because Norman Bates in the book is super smart. He really is. He goes, "I've thought this plan through. Actually, I'm not nervous. I know exactly what I'm going to say." And he says all the right things, kind of, and he's explaining that he forgot that that Mary had showed up and signed in. He's also described other couples that have come through, and he accidentally let slip that she had come up to the house and Mother was upset, and Arbogast gets concerned. In both the book and movie, he sees a lady sitting upstairs in the house, and he thinks it's Mary/Marion. So he wants to go see her. He's like, "Look, I'm a PI. I need to get up there. And talk with your mother to see if she's got any information." She ain't up there, bro. She ain't up there. He finds that out. He goes up there, and in the book versus the movie, he gets killed with a razor blade. That Norman Bates razor blade that goes missing, and he realizes that his mother took it. In the movie, I think it's just another kitchen knife. I think it's the same kitchen knife that was used to kill Marion. But he walks up to the house, comes up the stairs, and Mother kills him. But in the book, from Norman's point of view, he is downstairs watching him go upstairs and watching Mother kill him. So this is another reason why I was completely invested in the thought that Norma had killed Arbogast, or it was the killer in this, was because from Norman's point of view, like, it blatantly says that he's watching his mother slice up his face with his own straight razor, and I'm like, Jesus Christ. And the movie, though, it's something's off about the woman, and then it's a slash across Arbogast's face, and he falls down the stairs, and that's the end of him. And then he goes, and he decides he's going to drink to handle it, and he starts drinking to handle the situation. Well, because of the phone call he had made prior, he calls up Sam and Lila to explain to them that he's at this Bates Motel, and he's like, I think I got a lead. So they're like, okay, if we don't hear back, we're gonna go to the police. They don't hear back, so they go and talk to Sheriff Chambers. And I just want to take a quick moment. One of my favorite films is Halloween, and it very much takes inspiration from Psycho. So much so as having Janet Leigh, who plays Marion's daughter, Jamie Lee Curtis, play Laurie Strode. But also using the names of Sam Loomis and then Marion and Chambers for Nurse Marion Chambers. So, reading the book and watching the movie, catching those little things, it's like, oh, okay, I see where John Carpenter was coming from. I like it. But they go to talk to Sheriff Chambers, and it's pretty faithful on how Sheriff Chambers is, and it goes into, it says to them that Norma Bates has been dead for 20 years, or I guess in the movie it's just 10 years, but in the book it's 20 years. And that's whenever things get weird. I was like, whenever that part unfolded in the book, I go, is she a ghost? Is this a paranormal book? I always thought this was like a realistic killer story, but maybe this is paranormal. Maybe this is paranormal, I didn't know it. Wasn't paranormal. Anyways, Sheriff Chambers heads down. He talks to Norman. Norman says that the guy said he was going to Chicago, so Marion Chambers doesn't suspect anything. He comes back, and Lila's fixated on the mother. She's like, but maybe the mother isn't dead. So Lila goes to investigate with Sam at the Bates Motel. They pull up. They get a room. And these two scenes are similar and different in many ways. They insist in the book. They insist that they get cabin number 1. So they go to cabin number 1, and they start searching for clues. Whereas in the movie, I think they get cabin like 11 or something like that. And they go and sneak into cabin number 1. And in the movie, they find the paper that she had torn up where she had written down the math to figure out how much she would owe in the toilet. In the book, they find the other earring behind the shower. I actually wish they did the earring more than I wish they did the paper. I thought the earring was pretty cool. But now they're like, holy shit, she was here. This earring's covered in blood. Something happened to her here. And so she's like, so in the book, she goes, you distract Norman, I'll go get the police. In the movie, she's like, you go distract Norman, I'm going to go up to the house. So in the book, Sam goes and tries to really dish out this conversation with Norman, and he's talking with him, and Norman's drinking, and Norman's like, you want to drink? And see, the drinking's a big part in this book. And he goes, nah, I don't drink, I'm just trying to find out what happened. He's like, my wife, or I forgot what alias they use, she's got to go down and pick something up. And it gets unfolded, and Norman goes, she didn't leave. She went up to the house. And Sam's like, what? And then Norman throws the bottle at him and runs up to the house. And Sam's awoken by Sheriff Chambers. And this is all in the book, not the movie. And they go up, and now I'm going to switch over to the movie real quick so I can catch up. So in the movie, he talks to Norman, and then I don't remember what happens. That's crazy. Something happens. Either way, we end up inside the house. Lila is trying to figure out what has happened to Mary or / Marion. She runs upstairs. She's looking through the rooms. She sees that the mother's room is pristine, hasn't been touched since the 1800s. The bed, but the bed has this spot where someone's been laying. In the book, it talks about how she sees brown specks on the bed. And then she goes into Norman's room and sees that it's very childish. It's very much the room of a 12-year-old, but it's got the books, very adult-style books. So as she digs, she goes and finds out that there's a cellar, a fruit cellar, and she goes inside of it, and then it's revealed that the mother is in the cellar, but the mother isn't alive. It is a taxidermy corpse that Norman had dug up because he had killed his mother 20/10 years ago, depending on what we're talking about, and he felt guilty, went and did taxidermy on her to bring her back to life. She screams. Norman comes down to kill her, and Norman gets stopped. And that's the end of the action horror side of it. And then it's wraps up in both the book and the movie pretty similarly. He's inside of a psychiatric hospital, and the psychiatrist is explaining what's happening. And he's saying, well, Norman, after his mother died, his mind split up into 3 personalities. 2 for the movie. For the book, it's 3, and it's Norma, Norman, and then child Norman. So all 3 of those would take over at certain times. So Mother Norma would take over and strike revenge, because Norma the same way Norman was jealous when Norma had found a love and then ended up killing her and her love, which I know I didn't go over, but there's some things that I'm just inevitably going to miss. He wants Mother to feel the jealousy for him talking to other people, which is why Norma comes out and does the killing, because she's jealous of Norman. And a big part of that is his drinking, which is what brings her out. And then there's child Norman, who doesn't know how to handle things. Whereas in the movie, it's just Norma and Norman, and Norma does the killing, and Norman doesn't. But regardless, in both, you find out that he'd killed his mother, felt guilty, dug her up. With her gone, it created the split personality, and now Mother has taken over. And then it ends in both the book and movie the same way, where Anthony Perkins is, in the movie Anthony Perkins, Norman Bates, where Norman Bates is now completely in mother mode, and he goes, I would never do anything to hurt anyone. They'll see a fly lands on Norman's hand, and he goes, I wouldn't even hurt a fly. And it's got one of the most iconic shots with Anthony Perkins looking up, kind of straight into the camera and smiling. And it's a pretty fucking solid ending. And it ties in really greatly with Ed Gein. I mean, you look at how Ed Gein was with his mother, and that's pretty spot on. Pretty spot on with how Ed Gein was. His mother died, and that changed things. So, yeah, that's Psycho. I would recommend this. I would recommend reading the book first if you can. Book is very good. I thoroughly enjoyed the book. And the movie is also really good. There's a reason there's a reason why Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho is iconic. I mean, it's his most popular movie without a doubt. And it's because he takes the material, he takes the source material and really utilizes it. And I feel the source material really fits into Hitchcock's hand here. And Anthony Perkins does a fantastic job. Janet Leigh, amazing. You get a really good cast in Psycho. You'll never be able to make a movie that is the book without it being maybe a TV show, but not a movie. But the movie is very faithful. It really lives up to it. The parts that are missing, it's sad that you won't be able to capture that thing, but that's the reason for the book, I do really recommend reading the book. Check it out. Psycho by Robert Bloch. Super good. I would, if you haven't come around to the Psycho series and you're listening to this and you've gotten this far, you just spoiled everything, I still would say read the book and then watch the movie. But a lot of you have probably seen the movie. I recommend picking up the book. Doing a comparison yourself. I wasn't able to hit everything. And there's a lot there. The book's a quick read. And you'll find out that the book will briefly go over things that are discussed a lot in the movie. Like the whole car, trading in her car, big deal in the movie. Like a 2-line sentence in the book. The psychiatric hospital, very brief in the book. Decently, I mean, it's not like very long, but it's a decent sized scene in the movie. So there are differences there. I really did enjoy Psycho. I thought whenever I was doing research on Ed Gein and finding out how he connected, knowing that Ed Gein wasn't really that much of an inspiration and that most of the connection was by coincidence was kind of a shock, because it felt very much like Ed Gein's story as I was reading it. But they're both haunting. Everything about the book is haunting. The story of Ed Gein is haunting. And it's one of the most captivating books I've read in a long time. And I really hope everyone goes and checks it out. Thank you all so much for listening and tuning in. Thank you all for all your likes, comments, and subscriptions. It's been real fun bringing these episodes. Next week's episode, episode 4, should be a complete surprise. So stay tuned for that one. Continue to follow me on social media at Dude Horrifying. I'm doing this really cool thing throughout the month of August called the Faces of Horror, where every day I post a face of horror. I mean, I don't really know how to describe it. Monday through Wednesday is like your victims, your protagonists, and then Thursdays through Sundays are your antagonists, villains. Till then, as always, stay horrifying, my dudes.